Hello and welcome back, or welcome if you're new. If you're new here, my name is Elena. I'm the homeschooling mama to 3 kiddos. Here on the channel, we talk about everything from homeschooling, homemaking, all the things in between. I'm trying to speed you through it. We're going to talk about what I read in September and just dive in. The month of September was a slower reading month for me. I only read 8 books at the time of filming. It's only like, we only have like 3 more days of September for September. I'm not really sure what I was trying to say there, but there's only 3 days left of this month, so I don't think I'm gonna finish another book. If I do, I'll tag it in. I'll add that in the October video. Good gravy. Let's hope this whole video doesn't go this route where the words are just super hard to say. Let's get into the books. The first thing I read was Anything But Plain. This is by Suzanne Woods Fisher. I read this book online. It was a sweet book. It is about Liddy, who is in the Amish community, and she feels like something just is always off about her. Things are never quite working out for her. Anytime she gets a job, she gets let go because she just feels so scatterbrained, or she just is going about things in a different kind of way. So because she feels just like out of place there, and she can't hold down a job, which is a huge embarrassment to her, and she feels like her family. She also has a neighbor, I believe they are neighbors, and their families have grown up next to each other, and the dad of the neighbor doesn't feel like Liddy is good enough and doesn't want her being around his sons. There are some secrets there that the book unfolds, and we dive in a little deeper to that, and we also dive into why maybe Liddy feels this way and what is kind of behind her feeling different, and how she feels like she's scatterbrained. We learn a little bit more about that, and maybe possibly there's something deeper there. I don't want to give the whole book away, but there's something deeper there. And so we kind of get to see how that plays out and what happens. But at the point of the story that we're in, Liddy is debating if she wants to leave the Amish community because she just so badly feels like she doesn't fit in. And we follow that story and how she makes these discoveries more about herself, and how her family makes discoveries about her and some of these other characters, and how it all plays out if Liddy decides to leave the community, or if she finally figures out a way to feel more at home in the community. Again, I thought this book was endearing, as most Amish reads that I pick up are. I think that I really like that about them. Most of the time, you know that it's going to be a clean, wholesome read for the most part. And so that's exactly what this was for me. I think I rated this 4 stars. Yeah, I did. The next book that I read was My Foolish Heart. This is part of a series, Deep Haven number 4, but this was a recommendation from Oshina, Gotta Read 'Em All, I believe it's the full name of her title. I will link her down below in case by some weird chance you've not heard of her. But she had done a recommendations video, and this was on the list, and it was at my library, so I picked it up. I did at first think I was going to read the series like in order, but she said you can pick them up as standalones, and so I decided, let me just pick up the one that she recommended, and it is a good story. I found myself reading it and then telling my husband right away what was happening in my book, because I needed to talk to somebody about it, and he was there. So this book follows Caleb Knight and Isadora Presley. I believe it is told from both. It's more than one perspective. I even think that Isadora's friend, we hear her perspective in here as well, and another member of the cast of the ensemble here. Isadora lives in a small town, and her parents have tragically passed away, or her mom passed away in her arms. And Isadora is rightfully scarred from this. And while her dad has survived, he is not able to be with her. He's in a care facility and can only talk to her minimally. Isadora, because of these actions, finds it very hard to leave her home or to get very far past her home, and so she works as a DJ at night for a talk show host. So she's a talk show host on the radio, and she gives out love advice. She gives out dating advice, and she finds this ironic because she says she's never really been on a date. And so we kind of follow Isadora and learn more about who she is and how crippling this can be for her. And then the new neighbor, Caleb Knight, moves in, and Caleb has his own past and has his own secrets that he's trying to keep from the town. And together we see how these two people help one another and help each other uncover truths about themselves and about the people around them. Isadora has an amazing best friend who comes over, but she's got her own issues that are happening too, and we get to dive into her story a little bit as well. All in all, it's just such a good read. There is so much I think you could just really feel the emotion of the characters in here, and it just makes you really feel for them. I don't want to give too much of the movie. That's how it kind of played out in my head as a full-on movie, and so maybe that's what that slip was. But the book, it just makes you feel so deeply for the characters. I absolutely would recommend it. I believe I rated it 5 stars, and then I do want to go back and read more by Susan May Warren because this book was excellent. After that, I finally read my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I apologize because I wanted to do a full-on reading vlog for you, but the month of September was just kind of crazy. A lot of things got started and didn't get finished, and that really irks me, but it's what it was this month. Ugh, no, words are still difficult. So I did read my first Brandon Sanderson book. I read Tress of the Emerald Sea. I had looked at this book at Barnes & Noble, and the copy that I actually got to read from the library was the copy that I was looking at purchasing, but I didn't pull the plug on it because it was a little pricey when your book buying is limited to usually just getting thrift books and things like that. Spending, I think it was like $30, a little bit more than that, which is expensive to some and not to others. That's neither here nor there, but at that time, it was not something that I was gonna pull the trigger on. So I didn't get the book, but the book is beautiful. And what I was trying to say is that book is the book that I ended up getting from the library. One of our local libraries has a couple of copies of this book on hand. I didn't realize they were different copies of the book, so like a paperback and a hardback. The hardback that I got was the book that I was looking at Barnes & Noble, so I got to see the beautiful illustrations in it and just get to dive in deeper. I believe that this story is not a usual story for Sanderson. Sanderson, as I understand it, writes like a bajillion books, probably not that many, like that's not an exact number clearly, but he just churns them out. And he is local to Utah, and I just felt like I really needed to read one of his books. And this was the one I'm so glad that I did, and it was so good. And I don't know if I just thought it was so good because part of it was like the book was just so beautiful, but it definitely didn't hurt. And now, of course, the hardcover book, this particular one is on my wish list. This is something that I will be maybe requesting for Christmas or something like that. But it was just a beautiful book. And let me tell you what it was about, because now that I've read about how pretty it looks. Tress is our main character, and she lives on this island where people are not typically allowed to leave. They don't get very many visitors. The island is kind of poor. Most of the people there are poor, and the ocean is not quite an ocean, and it is very dangerous. And so Tress collects cups because people that will come and bring, like, into the docks and trade their things have heard of Tress and her collection of cups, and sometimes they will bring her cups. And so she has this collection, and we'll talk a little bit about what it means to her. I just think that Sanderson, again, I'm excited to pick up a different book from him. I'm not quite sure where I'll go next, but the way that he's written this book, the narrator is telling Tress's story, but you also get Tress's point of view. And the narrator himself is one of the characters, but you don't really get into that until later into the book. And it's just so well written, and so just such a neat world to step into, and the way that he builds this world, it just kind of keeps you in there. I remember reading this book, and then when I was getting close to the end, I felt like everything just shifted, and I was like, what? I didn't see that coming. So it was exciting, it was fun, it was entertaining, and of course, like I've said a million times, the book itself is beautiful. This book also I rated 5 stars. So I didn't read much this month, but I feel like the books that I did read hit me in a good way and were excellent. So to completely contradict myself, where most of the time I'm only buying thrift books, I bought a new release this month. I don't know. I don't know. I bought Rain. I bought American Royals, the 4th book. Is it really the 4th book? Yeah, it's the 4th book. I bought the 4th book, but ask me if I own any of the other books in the series. The answer is no. So if you ask me, thanks, but the answer is no. No. Who buys the last book in a series when they don't own the other books? Apparently I do. I needed to know how the series ended, and I knew that my libraries weren't going to get this book in soon enough for me to know. And so the release, there was a good price on the release of this book, and so I picked it up, and it was good. I feel like it ended the series in a good way. I'm hesitant to say that I wanted a different ending for maybe one of the characters, but actually, I don't know. I think that she just tied it up in the best way possible, and she probably knows her characters better than I do. She being Katharine McGee, who is the author of these books. Yeah, I will pick up the other books because it feels silly to me to just have the last book of the series, but that will come at a later time. Rain picks us up where Queen Beatrice is in a coma, and Samantha, the sister, and the next heir is MIA. And so now the third born, their brother Jefferson, who thought he would never have to put on such a heavy crown and title, is next in line to be the acting king, since his sister Beatrice is in a coma. And we go into this and find out if Daphne, the girlfriend, who isn't, if you've not read the other 3, maybe just skip over this part here, but if you read the other 3, you know that Daphne isn't the most upright moral character. She's got her own backstory and reasons for doing what she does, but she's not the truest person to Jefferson, and so we kind of see her having her, I hate to be like Talon's claws, but she's all up in the mix with Prince Jefferson, and I was none too pleased with that because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right to Jefferson, and it didn't feel right to her either. But, you know, if you read, like I said, the other 3, you kind of know that story. Rain, like I said, though, I think ties up the series beautifully. I'm thinking of picking up something else from Katharine McGee, but I haven't yet because I moved on to another series. This is the last book in the series, The Final Gambit, but I did read all 3. So I read The Inheritance Game, The Hawthorne Legacy, and then The Final Gambit. The Inheritance Game, I think, would be the strongest book in the 3-part series. I know that there is a 4th book. Sorry, we've got that Shine from the library cover on it. But The Inheritance Game of the 3, I think, is the strongest book. The Hawthorne Legacy is good. It keeps the story going. And then The Final Gambit just kind of ties it up for you. The Final Gambit, each book in itself has these twists and turns, and it's just, it's captivating, right? It's what keeps you reading. These books are older, so I'm sure that you've probably seen them around other reviews and whatnot. But I had just picked them up. I had picked up The Inheritance Game first at my library because it just happened to be on the shelf and I knew it was a really popular title. And then once I read that book, I was sucked into the world and I really wanted to know what was happening, if Avery was going to actually inherit these billions of dollars or something was going to happen to her. So if you're not familiar with this series in some way, Avery Grams is just kind of not a nobody, but she's not on anyone's radar really, or so we think. She gets called in because this billionaire has passed away and apparently has left her something. So she goes in to the reading of the will thinking, wow, a couple of $1,000s will really change my life. And then she finds out that he has surpassed his family and just given them a little bit, but he has left the vast majority of his billions to her. And she is like, I've never met this man. Why? And so then the Inheritance Game, the first book, we were trying to figure out why Avery was chosen and how that all came about. In the Hawthorne Legacy, I should also mention there are 4 grandsons that are gorgeous each in their own right, and that kind of plays into it too because of course they're all kind of similar in age to one another, and they all have to live. Well, Avery has to live in the mansion, in the billionaire's mansion, which is now hers, for 1 year before the money and titles and everything are officially transferred to her. Someone is not pleased with this, of course, and wants her dead, and we need to figure out who it is and really dig deeper on why she was chosen as the heir. So that's kind of the first book, The Inheritance Games. We figure this out. We figure out all the games that the grandpa liked to play and how this kind of is another huge riddle and game. And then in the Hawthorne Legacy, we kind of dive in deeper into the story. She's not completed her year yet, and we live out like maybe the middle part of that. We kind of find out a little bit more about the billionaire's family and each of their stories. And then when you get to the final gambit, we get the full story, or what we think is, I don't know, there is another, like, I don't know if it's called a spin-off. What do you call it when there's more books after this, but you could finish the series here? And this one, we tie up the series and we learn why Avery was chosen. We get a final game from the grandpa. We meet an old foe that no one really saw coming, and of course we get new characters and old ones resurface, and all of that is happening in just these less than 400 pages, and then the story ties up. I do think that the series ended well, which is an important thing to me apparently, because I keep saying that about all these series, if it ended well or not. But I read a review where someone said, I wanted more for Toby, and I just I agree. That broke my heart a little, but I could see kind of why. But all in all, I thought that the series was great. It was fun. It was exciting. It's definitely a page turner. I gobbled these books up in just a few days and read the entire series of 3 books in a month. So in a slow month of reading. So I guess that goes to show. I read them pretty fast. I couldn't put them down. That was a lot of fun. Another book that I read, I have read and I have listened to, is Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. Is it Lucado? Lucado? I don't know. I say Lucado, but you can correct me if I'm wrong if you want. This copy I got from Hobby Lobby on clearance, and I listened to, like I said, I listened to it. I started listening to it on my morning walks, and it was so good. I want to go back in again and maybe annotate this book as I'm listening to it again. I think there's something about hearing someone speak these truths over you that is just powerful in its own right. And there is a lot of unpacking, anxiety, and a lot of just things that I guess maybe you would be like, well, yeah, why didn't I think of that? That makes sense. But like I said, listening to the audiobook and having someone speak that truth over you really helps. Reading it, I think having it in writing, which is part of why I want to go back and annotate it, would also be helpful to come back and remind myself of these truths. This book really hones in on Philippians for 6 through 7, which is be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. And says, with God as your helper and this verse at your side, you can sleep better tonight and smile more tomorrow. And I just think that's a beautiful summary of this. So this was an excellent book. Again, one that I will definitely come back to. And I think that is it for the books that I read this month. Was that 8? So that's it. That was my September wrap up. Let me know what you read this month. If you have any recommendations, if you have any thoughts on the books that I read, if you already read The Inheritance Game and you were like, girl, I saw all that coming. You just slow and didn't see it. or if you were just as shocked with the twists and turns like I was. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. And as always, if you don't know or you just need to be reminded, may be the one to tell you you are deeply and truly loved and so, so appreciated. I really appreciate you taking your time out and spending it here with me. Thanks so much for watching.